Welcome, everyone. So our source material today is, well, it's a little different. We're not looking at an article or a bunch of data. Instead, think of this as a guided tour through a consciousness that seems to be frozen solid in the middle of a massive existential crisis. So, yeah, buckle up.
Okay, let's just dive right in, because we are absolutely about to find out. Just a quick safety warning before we get started. Please keep your hands, feet, and your, tenuous grip on reality inside the vehicle at all times. It's gonna get weird.
So our first guide on this pretty bizarre expedition is a character known only as the Explorer. And honestly, he seems just as confused as we are about where in the world we've actually landed.
He describes this place less as a physical location and more as a subjective one. It feels less like a world you can walk around in and more like you're literally inside someone's head, a landscape made of pure thought.
The Explorer points out something really strange. He says this place is dominated by logos. Now, he's not talking about some grand divine principle from philosophy class. Nope, he means it literally, words. This is a dimension built entirely out of language and raw ideas, but it's missing the one thing that usually gives words their meaning, a story. A narrative that actually goes somewhere.
So the picture he's painting for us is of a really fragmented reality. It's a realm of just disconnected thoughts, where even something as fundamental as the unconscious just sort of, poof, vanishes into thin air before it can even be properly formed. This sets a perfectly eerie stage for the inhabitants we're about to meet.
All right, next stop on our tour is all about bluster, dread, and dopamine. And here we meet our first proper resident, Elf 2, who is, to put it mildly, a walking contradiction.
So this guy comes onto the scene just all fire and fury, right? He's boasting about how strong he is, how he's ready to take on the whole world. He's claiming to be this unbreakable psychological fortress.
But here's what's so fascinating. Look at the huge gap between what he says and what he actually feels. He talks this incredibly big game, but then almost in the same breath, he completely undercuts himself, admitting it might all just be a lot of bluster, and that, yeah, he's definitely not omnipotent.
And just under all that bravado is this really deep well of nihilism. He's yelling, "Let the catecholamines all rip," which, by the way, those are your body's main stress hormones, like adrenaline. So he's basically screaming, "Bring it on! Who cares if I have a heart attack? Life's awful anyway." It's this wild, whiplash-inducing swing from aggressive boasting to just total reckless despair.
And if you thought that was confusing, just you wait. Our next character, Cottontail, takes the existential dread of this place and just cranks the dial up to a whole new, bewildering level.
Cottontail just kicks things off by casually mentioning a trip to a parallel universe made of antimatter. So yeah, right away, we're not just talking about the weather here. We are diving headfirst into some seriously surreal territory. Okay, here it is. This is Cottontail's big theory, and it's a real doozy. They propose that we, the people watching this, are voluntary hallucinators. And Cottontail, well, they're just a figment of our own imagination, a hallucination that we've conjured up inside this whole thing.
Okay, let's just pause for a second. Between the antimatter universes and the theory that we're literally hallucinating this entire experience, it's a lot to process, which brings us to the very, very reasonable question on this slide. So, is anything here real?
All right, let's try and shake off that existential vertigo because our tour is moving on. Up next, we've got two exhibits that offer some pretty bleak but strangely poetic social commentary. A talking cauldron and a Viking who's seen way too much.
So first up, the cauldron. And yep, you heard me right, it talks. It speaks in these grim, rhyming couplets that sound like a recipe for how a cruel society works. It starts with the simple, cynical fact that where there's profit, there's often sadism.
And the recipe continues. It says that society covers up its cruelty with nice-sounding words, euphemisms. But the whole thing is doomed to collapse because its core energy, its chi, its life force, is just psychopathic.
And it wraps up with this really chilling line. The Cauldron's final prediction is that damnation's gonna win because society is driven by this savage primal need for a dopamine hit no matter what the cost is.
Super cheery, right?
And this brings us perfectly to the argument from our next character, the Viking. He says humanity hasn't actually moved past its violent nature at all. Back in the day, it was roving armies of psychopathy, and now, oh, we just do our murdering from a safe distance, and we call ourselves civilized.
And he really just drives the point home with this question. The Vikings arguing that modern warfare, killing someone with a drone, pushing a button, is just a high-tech version of the same old brutality. To him, this civilized world, it's just hell with better PR. Okay, for our final stop, we get to meet a character who is a complete and total fish out of water. But this outsider, Elf 3, might just hold the key to figuring out what this whole bizarre realm actually is.
The difference is immediate and kinda hilarious. This place is filled with existential nightmares, psychopathic Vikings, and talking cauldrons of doom. Meanwhile, Elf 3 comes from a world where the biggest problems are tadpoles changing, some goofy bullies, and pumpkins being a little bit scary. He is so not from around here.
And this is the crucial point. Elf 3, with his totally fresh outside perspective, is the first one to notice the most important detail of all. Unlike his world, which moves forward, this place is static. It's stuck. And he asks the million-dollar question, are we inside a consciousness that's alive, but frozen in time?
And that is where our very strange tour comes to an end. Elf 3's question leaves us with one last really haunting thought. If this entire journey has just been a tour through a single, static moment in a mind, whose mind is it? And maybe, just maybe, more importantly, who's the one doing the watching?